Hey guys, SliceablePaper here, and we're going to be taking a look at some new cards from the Knights of the Frozen Throne expansion. And the first card we're going to look at is Rotface. It's the Warrior Legendary Minion. Whenever this minion survives damage, summon a random Legendary Minion. Now this is continuing that theme that they're pushing this expansion for, kind of a self-harming warrior type with, play with berserkers, play with this card, get some value off of hurting your own minions. The big problem with this card is that a lot of the legendary minions have, powerful battle cries that need to take effect. Otherwise, they're just kind of vanilla statted, 8 and 9 drops, 8 mana, 8/8, 9 mana, 8/8 cards. This card is crazy if you get, big Deathwing off of it, or like the Deathwing Dragon Lord or something like that. Other than that, you're just kind of getting low to mid statted cards for their cost. You can get good value out of this basically because you're getting bodies when you hurt it. But I think this card is actually going to be less powerful than some people might think. And most people will just play it for the memes, for the fun of it. It's got very low stats for an 8-drop, and if you really need like a big 8-drop minion or a big 8-drop legendary in your deck, I think Grom might be a much better fit, especially in like a self-harming warrior that wants to enrage minions. So I think Grom is a better 8-drop for this type of deck. Rotface is weak to silence. When it gets silence, you've just wasted 8 mana for a 4/6. I think this card is a lot better in Arena, where silence, is less of an issue, and abilities are kind of, to an extent, less of an issue when they're summoned versus in Constructed. You kind of need bodies on the board in Arena just to kind of push for damage. So I think Rotface is going to be a very excellent Arena card, much better than it will be in Constructed. Rattling Rascal. This is a very interesting card. It's extremely low statted for 4-drop. It's kind of comparable to Bomb Squad, where you need to get like a powerful battle cry effect off of it, and then you get kind of a downside at the end. Bomb Squad and Rattling Rascal both being 2/2s with a highly downsided death rattle effect. Rattling Rascal works well with the card Treachery in Warlock, where you kind of play this card, get that good battle cry off of it, give it to them with Treachery, and then trade into it, and then all of a sudden you've got 2 5/5s on the board. The problem is, it requires such a specific card to actually be good that I don't think you're going to be seeing it run all that much. I don't think you're going to see Warlocks run this all that much in Constructed. In Arena, you're not going to see this card used at all. The downside is just too much. With Bomb Squad, you can kind of plan around taking 5 damage to the face. You really can't plan around giving your opponent a 5/5 minion on board just to play with. So I don't think this card is going to be used in Arena at all, just due to that very, very high downside death rattle. Howl Fiend. Just like Rattling Rascal, this is a card that you're going to use with Treachery. At least in Constructed. I don't think you're going to see this card used at all in decks that don't run Treachery. Mainly because the downside is such a big downside. Most discard cards, you're only discarding a certain amount of cards. With this, you can discard 1, or even 0, or you can discard up to like a max of 6 cards, which is absolutely terrible. And the fact is, you cannot specifically choose which card you want to discard. It's a random card you discard, so you might actually discard like the worst card possible for throwing out. Again, you're going to use this card with Treachery if you want to kind of mill your opponent, or just try to force your opponent just to dump their hand. You can kind of play like a bunch of 1/1s on board, like 6 1/1 tentacles, play this card, and then run them all into the Howl Fiend. Or you'd play it with like Spreading Madness, just kind of pinging it down and forcing your opponent to draw off of Howl Fiend, or to discard off of Howl Fiend. Other than that, I don't think this card is going to be very good in Constructed, except in like those kind of niche, kind of give your opponent a bad ability kind of deck. And I think, some Warlock, some people might actually try that, and I think it'll be fun just to kind of mess with your opponent a little bit, but I don't think this is going to be a very high-tier card to use. In Arena, this is a different story. The best 4-drop in the game is the Water Elemental, a 3/6 for 4 that mages play. Howlfiend is a 3/6 for 3. And especially in Arena where you're kind of drafting, you tend to draft kind of bad cards a lot of the times, or like suboptimal cards. Discarding them is not as much a problem as it is discarding them in Constructed. So I think in Arena that discard is not going to be as big of an issue as you might think, especially since this is a Warlock card, and especially in early game where Warlocks kind of want to draw anyway. With their hero power, you can kind of offset that discard effect to a limited extent by just kind of tapping for more cards. And the opponent is just going to have a big body on turn 3 to deal with. After turn 3, I don't think this card is going to be that good in Arena, but if you can coin this card out on even turn 2, I think this card is going to be insane in Arena. And it's a common, and it gets set bonus, so Warlocks are going to be using this card quite a bit, and I think it's going to be a lot better in Arena than some people might think. Shadow Essence. 6-mana priest spell, summon a 5/5 copy of a random minion in your deck. This is another tool for Quest Priests to use to pull out their Death Rattle cards. You might find a way to fit this in like a Malagos Velen Priest deck where you want to do high damage to your opponent's face with spells. Other than that, I don't think this card is going to be seen a whole lot in Constructed. Mainly because there are better cards that Priest can fit in that 6-drop than this. Mainly the Dragonfire Potion. Big board clear versus like a summoning of a minion. This is a decent card in Arena. You summon a copy of it, you don't pull it from your deck, so you kind of get an extra card off of this. The problem is it's a 5/5, which tends to be a little understated for a 6-drop. So you need to kind of pull like a card with like a powerful like continuing effect, or with a powerful Death Rattle. Otherwise, you're just getting a 5/5. So you kind of need to already have a board, or you need to have a powerful card to pull from your deck. Play Dead. Hunter card triggers a friendly minion's Death Rattle. Other cards in Hunter that do this are like Terror Scale Hunter, Princess Huhuran. Princess Huhuran being a 6-mana 6/5 with this effect. Terror Scale Hunter being like, I think it's like a 3-drop with this effect. I think this is actually better than those cards, really. Even though you're getting a body with those other cards, you really are only playing Terror Scale Hunter and Princess Huhuran to get that Death Rattle trigger effect. And since those are like higher cost, you can kind of play this for 1 mana. It kind of helps even out your curve a little bit. Gets you those effects off of like High Mane, Kindly Grandmother, Rat Pack, Raptor Hatchling, and you can kind of play those cards off curve a little bit with this. So I think this card is better in Constructed than you might think. I think this is an okay card in Arena, mainly because it only triggers on Death Rattles. You kind of want to already have to have drafted like a lot of Death Rattles, or you need to hold this in hand for when you get High Mane. So other than like using that to trigger, this is going to be a dead card in your hand, and it's going to be a super dead card when you top deck it. So I think this card is going to be a lot worse in Arena than in Constructed. Frost Clone. Mage Secret. After your opponent plays a minion, put 2 copies of it into your hand. This is a potentially powerful, like, super late game card where like you're playing in kind of a control-y deck against like a control priest or something like that. I feel it's a little too slow to play in an aggro meta. This is kind of like Mirror Image, but the benefit to Mirror Image was that you actually got the minion on board versus getting it thrown into your hand, and you could kind of use that minion the next time your turn came around. Maybe you want to use this in conjunction with like Glacial Mysteries, that mage card, the mage spell that brings all your secrets onto the field. I think this card is going to be a lot better in Arena than in Constructed. In Constructed, it's a little slow to use. In Arena, this card is excellent to use, especially in late game where you're kind of fighting for card advantage and you're both like in top deck wars. You kind of play this card and you're essentially drawing like 2 cards for 3 mana. So it's basically like an Arcane Intellect where you're kind of pulling like a copy of your minion versus drawing from your deck. The only problem with this card is that as long as your opponent kind of knows how to play around secrets and try to figure out what secrets you've got, your opponent kind of gets to choose which minion you get, unless, again, you're in that kind of top deck war, and then they kind of have to play into it. So I don't think this card is, like, super crazy, but I think it's going to be more than adequate to use in Arena, and I think it's going to be an excellent secret to play. Death Speaker. Battle Cry. Give a friendly minion immune this turn. I think you want to use this more in a deck where you like kind of have a minion with an ongoing effect, and you kind of need to trade with it. Maybe like an aggro deck where you need to trade with your opponent's board. The big problem is it's kind of low attack for a 3-drop. So I don't think this is going to be used in constructed all that much. I think it's a solid Arena card. It's got okay stats, but you really want to get value off of this card. But as long as you've got like another minion to hit, I think this card is going to be okay. And it kind of forces your opponent to kind of play against like a board that's already been made and is like kind of immune at that point in time. It's a win more card, and I don't know if it'll be played all that much in Arena. It's a solid card. You could get worse commons than this, but I don't think it's going to be chosen all that often in Arena. Breath of Sindragosa. I want to compare this card with Flame Cannon, which was a card that did 4 damage to a random minion for like 1 mana more. I think Breath of Sindragosa is kind of fundamentally worse than Flame Cannon due to the fact that even though it's 1 mana less and you're getting a freeze effect off of it, that 4 damage was kind of like OP and basically destroyed your opponent's game plan if it hit on like a minion that they were kind of relying on. It really threw off your opponent's early game, and Breath of Sindragosa does not do that. There are a lot of 2-drops and even some 1-drops that have more than 2 health, 3 or 4 even. So I don't think this card is as good as you might think. It does have that freeze effect, so it kind of helps stall out the game, especially in late game where you need to kind of stall the board a little bit, and it does help even out your mana curve with it being that 1 cost, but I don't think this card is as good as you might think. It's an okay card in Arena, but I think you can get better spells than this. Bone Drake. More tools for like a dragon kind of quest priest. I think this is very interesting. I personally like to try to run, especially this last expansion, I kind of tried to run like a Death Rattle-y dragon package kind of Highlander type deck, and I'm really looking forward to fitting this into that deck. That's really the only thing I can kind of see this fitting into is like a combo of like Quest and Dragon Priest. Other than that, this is a solid 6-drop with a decent death rattle, but since it's a dragon, I don't think many decks are going to be using this, at least in Constructed. In Arena, it's a completely different story. This is a ridiculous card to use in Arena. Really good. It's got a very strong death rattle where you're essentially drawing a card that's not in your deck, and any card that adds a card to your hand that's not in your deck is fundamentally really, really good. And you get solid stats. I mean, you don't have super high health for a 6-drop, but death rattle cards tend to be kind of lower in health anyway, and you want to get that death rattle effect. And in Arena, you're not going to see many silences, so I think this card is excellent in Arena, and many people are going to be using this. Meat Wagon. Fit for hand buff paladins. Fit for buffing decks. Summons a minion from your deck versus drawing a minion from your deck. Actually, no, it doesn't summon a copy, so it brings it out of your deck. So you're basically drawing a card and throwing it on board. So you need to run like Death Rattly cards, or like um, cards with like continuing effects versus like big powerful battle cries. Um, the only thing about this card is that initially it's a 4 mana 1/4, which are very, very weak stats. So you want to get at least like 1 or 2 buffs off of it. You want it to be at least like 3 attack, maybe even 4, or even higher to get like better value out of it. In Arena, you're not going to. I don't think this card is going to be used in Constructed or in Arena. The stats are just too low, and it requires too much time investment and like value investment into it, even before it gets thrown on board, to get value off of it. Serenite Chain Gang. Summon a copy of this minion. It's got a taunt. It's very much like the wolves that Shaman summons. It's 1 mana more, and Shaman would get like a 2 mana overload for it. So this is, kind of basically that card with a better effect off of it. I want to compare this to Doppelgangster as well. So for a mana less, you're getting basically like 4/6 worth of stats versus 6/6 worth of stats. So you're getting 2 less attack and a taunt for 1 mana less. So actually, I think this card might actually be better than Doppelgangster. It forces your opponent to deal with it since it's got taunt. Helps you build a wall a little bit. And any buffing effects you get off of it are just kind of icing on the cake, because the copy of the minion does get the same buffs that the original one gets, and you can bounce them back to hand. So I think this card is actually going to be a lot better than some people might think. I don't think it's going to be running Constructed, mainly because hand buff didn't really get off the ground. You might run into it a couple of times, but I don't think you're going to run into it and have to worry about running into it too much in Constructed. In Arena, this card is going to be insane. Paladins are going to be running this card a lot. You may even see like Hunter running it. Shamans can run it. Hell, even like mages and priests might run it. So I think this is a much more solid card in Arena than you might think it is. Alright, now we got our next Death Knight we're looking at. We've already seen rogues, we've seen hunters, we've seen shamans, we've seen mages, and now we're getting priests. Shadow Reaper Anduin. Destroy all minions with 5 or more attack. Shadow Word Death the entire board. Now keep in mind, this is all minions. It's not just all enemy minions, so it's going to hit your minions as well. So it's kind of a downside as well. What's the hero power for this? Void Form. Deal 2 damage after you play a card. Refresh this hero power. You want to play this with like Raza. And this is very similar to like the effect of like some people would play like a priest where they're playing like Raza with Embrace the Shadow and Auction Master Beardo, or they'd play it with like Shadow Form and Auction Master Beardo. So if you look at it that way, you're getting like, with the combo, you're getting like 5 or 6 mana cost combo, and you'd use it with kind of spell reduction effects, and kind of use it in conjunction with Raza, where it's like a 0 cost hero power that was refreshing every time you played a spell. I think fundamentally this card, Shadow Reaper Anduin, is kind of worse than those combos. It's not a very great card, especially used in like an aggro meta where a lot of people are running like aggro these days. So I think Shadow Reaper Anduin is not a very good Death Knight at all. It does not have a very powerful effect. In Arena, it's a little bit better. Basically, just based off that hero power alone, you kind of get a little extra value out of it. But I don't think this card is... I don't think this Death Knight is better than any of the other ones we've seen so far. This is probably the worst Death Knight we've seen so far. I'm kind of disappointed because I was really looking forward to getting the Priest Death Knight, but it's bad. It's not great at all. I don't know. Hopefully Constructed goes into more of a control-y type meta where this is going to be a good fit, but I don't think it's going to be. So unfortunately, I'm a little disappointed, but It was bound to happen. Alright, Web Weave. Druid spell summons 2/1/2 poisonous spiders. I want to take a look at this versus Spreading Plague. Spreading Plague is fundamentally a much better card than Web Weave. You're getting higher stats out of it right off the gate. Even you're getting like 2/4 worth of stats with like poisonous on 2 different minions, versus just building a wall. You get 6 worth of stats off of Spreading Plague, even if you're up against like one opponent or one minion on the board. The benefit to Web Weave is you don't need the opponent to have a board, but normally they will. In Arena, this is a much better card than in Constructed. You're getting like 2/1/2 poisonous spiders, and as you're going into the late game, you really want to have something that can deal with like your opponent's big drops. So I think Web Weave is much better in Arena than people might actually think based off of it. So yeah, that's Web Weave, and I think it's a very fun card to use in Arena. Alright, final thing we're going to look at is actually not a new card. It's a card that I looked at, I think a couple of videos ago. Desperate Resistance. I just do want to note that the name has actually been changed to Desperate Stand. It's got the exact same effect, the exact same mana cost. So my opinions on that card haven't changed, but I just did want to note that Desperate Resistance has had a name change to Desperate Stand. Alright, so that's the end of this video. We're going to come back tomorrow with even more cards, and I hope you guys liked it. You guys can like and subscribe to this channel. You can comment on the video if you want, and I'll see you guys next time.